You are on, ma'am.
All right, action. Thank you. At 5:01, I will call the June 2nd, wow, meeting of the Quality of Life Committee to order. And if we could get a roll call, Jennifer.
Councillor Jamie Cassett.
Here.
Councillor Michael Garcia.
Present.
Councillor Chris Rivera.
Here.
Councilwoman Renee Villarreal.
Present.
And Chair Carol Romero-Worth.
I am here. We have a full deck. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda? Well, actually, first, are there changes from staff to the agenda?
No changes tonight, Madam Chair.
Okay, changes from the committee? If there are no changes, is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilwoman Villarreal and a second from Councilor Rivera. Can we take a roll call on approval of the agenda, please?
Councillor Michael Garcia.
Yes.
Councillor Chris Rivera.
Yes.
Councilwoman Renee Villarreal.
Yes.
Councillor Jamie Cassett.
Yes.
Chair Carol Romero-Worth.
Yes. Terrific. On to approval of the consent agenda. Are there items the committee would like to hear this evening? Need to do my. Councilor Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to remove item B as in Bravo and E as in Echo.
All right. Other items from the committee? With that, can we get a motion to approve as amended?
Move to approve as amended.
Second.
Another roll call. We have a motion by Councilwoman Villarreal, a second from Councilor Rivera. Did I get that right? And if we could get a roll call on approval of the consent agenda as amended.
Councillor Chris Rivera.
Yes.
Councilwoman Renee Villarreal.
Yes.
Councillor Jamie Cassett.
Yes.
Councillor Michael Garcia.
Yes.
And Chair Carol Romero-Worth.
Yes. With that, we will move to the approval of the May 19th, 2021 minutes. Are there changes to the minutes from staff?
None from staff, Madam Chair.
Any from the committee? Is there a motion?
Move to approve. Second.
We have a motion from Councilwoman Villarreal and a second from Councilor Cassett. If we could take the roll call on approval of the May 19th minutes.
Councilwoman Renee Villarreal.
Yes.
Councillor Jamie Cassett.
Yes.
Councillor Michael Garcia.
Yes.
Councillor Chris Rivera.
Yes.
And Chair Carol Romero-Worth.
Yes. All right, now we will move to the items pulled from consent. We'll start with item B, a resolution establishing an operation plan for Bicentennial Pool for the 2021 season. I believe Director Wheeler is here. Is that, let's see, is she here? And, well, I don't see Director Wheeler. Is Gino Rinaldi here? I think he is, yeah. Yes, there you are. Terrific. Okay, and Councilor Garcia, you pulled this item. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Gino. Peace to you as well. Hope all is well with you. Quick question. When this was heard at Public Works and Utilities, I had requested that the evaluation for the pool be included in the packet, and I don't see that. I mean, I don't feel I could make an appropriate decision on this matter without the evaluation that we spoke about in regards to what repairs need to be made, proposed costs, etc. And so I don't know if you have an update on that, Gino.
Counselor, we had communicated with Regina about getting the information.
I don't know if you had any more information, Kira. I know you're there. I don't have that information since I wasn't on the site assessment and the site, I guess you would say the construction, that portion of it. But I see-
Madam Chair, Councilor Garcia,
hello.
Regina's joined, so she may be able to answer that question.
Hi, Director
yeah.
Wheeler. Thank you for joining us. Be safe out there.
Yeah, thank you so much. Sorry I wasn't here. I looked at the item specifically listed after it was postponed from finance, and I didn't see quality of life listed, so I didn't know it was going to this committee, but I'd be happy to answer the question. Councilor Garcia, we actually don't have, I think I mentioned to you before that we have a contractor working on the extensive quote for the full repairs of the pool, and that won't be available for a few more weeks. So all we know right now is what we've done and what we believe needs to be done, but we don't have a solid quote for the full repairs. We believe it's pretty darn close to a full rebuild, probably, $1 million plus or minus $1 million or something, but we just don't have that information yet.
Okay, thank you so much, Director Wheeler. I really appreciate the clarification. And I think the question kind of arose around are we sure that the leakage that happened last summer, and I'm sure probably, years before that, it just was never kind of noticed, but the impact, and how are we sure that there's not a sinkhole, any of those other type of safety issues? And I couldn't remember if it was you or Mr. Rinaldi who had said, well, we've looked into that. There was an evaluation that said there was nothing of the sort. So that's the evaluation I'm more so interested in, and also in conjunction with the evaluation that's currently being done, but the one that was spoken about that had been conducted in the past.
Yes, thank you, Chairperson and Councilor Garcia. We did have contractors in the pool assess the possibility of any safety risks or any structural risks to the pool, and they felt that in their professional opinion, that there were no safety risks and there was no risk to the structure of the pool from the leakage.
Okay, can we get that report in writing? Because I definitely would like to have that before I make any decision on the matter, and hopefully that report goes thorough enough to say that we can confirm the seepage hasn't caused any loose ground to potentially cause a sinkhole. So
thank you, Chairperson and Councilor Garcia. I don't think that we'll be getting that in writing. The pool people were very tentative about being involved in putting their licenses on the line with respect to any decisions they were making. They weren't able to dig up fully around the pool, or we didn't allow them to make a big punch a hole in the bottom of it or anything like that, but that was their assessment that they shared with us. So it isn't in writing.
okay, I don't know how comfortable I am then with that, given that they're not willing to put their license on the line, and we can't then confirm it. In essence, it's kind of hearsay because we can't justify it. And I think that's what we need to ensure, and coupled with the amount it's going to cost to potentially repair it, but the thorough, extensive review to ensure that the long-term impact by the seepage, what is it, what had happened, what can we confirm? And without that information, I think we're really missing out on a critical component of this. And in my opinion, we can't move forward without that. Do we know if this is going to go back to Finance Committee, given that Finance was canceled on Monday, or is it scheduled just to go to governing body next week?
I think it's scheduled to go to governing body next week.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. With that, I'm going to make the same recommendation that we pass it to governing body with no recommendation. So I'll make that motion, Madam Chair.
Okay, is there a second on that motion?
Second for purposes of discussion.
All right. All right. We have a motion and a second, but we still have more conversation. Councilor Garcia, did you have any other questions?
None at the time, Madam Chair. Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. Councilor Rivera, I believe your hand was up next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Regina, do we, and just an approximation, do we know how much water is leaking from Bicentennial Pool monthly or daily?
Thank you for the question. Yes, I believe it's in the memo, and I believe it's 130,000 gallons a month approximately, and that's from measuring last year's water use at the meter and subtracting for average evaporation. So the water team helped us evaluate that from the water meter data.
And is it the pool and the kiddie section that's leaking as well, or is it just the main pool?
We believe it's the main pool.
Okay.
We do, Counselor, have Christine Chavez from the Water Conservation Office is somewhere here. If she had more information and you wanted to hear from that, because she's the one that it's her office that did that assessment. Is that correct, Director Wheeler?
Actually, Jesse Roach himself helped us evaluate the data, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Okay.
I think we believe it's from the, if Christine has any further information about the distinction between the kiddie pool and the big pool, I hadn't heard any, but if she has some, that would be great.
Okay. I know she's listening. I don't see her. So we'll see if she joins. And if she doesn't join, I'll assume she doesn't have any other information. Councilor Rivera, back to you. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. If she does come on, I did have some questions for her regarding the drought and how long we thought that might continue to go on, if she had any of that information. But really, I won't be at the Wednesday council meeting, so I'm just going to give my recommendation now, and I know it's moving on, but with the amount of leakage that it has and the really the not getting as much use as a pool like Salvador Perez does, that can house more people and have more as a larger pool and can probably be more useful to the overall community. The drought situation that we're still in. I know this is a resolution establishing an operational plan, but my recommendation is that we close it down for this summer and that we do the repairs before next summer and we get ready for next summer. So I'll just let that be known now, and that's my take on it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Counselor. And Christine Chavez we're sending her the meeting link right now, so she should be available if you want to circle back when she joins. Counselor Cassett, I believe you have your hand up next.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And I think that some of these questions, Regina, you had already mentioned that we're waiting for the larger quote from the contractor. And I had asked some of these at Public Works. And I think one of my biggest questions was, if we put off the repairs until the end of the summer, one, do they cost more? And two, does it hurt our ability to be open in time for summer 2022? And I don't know if you have any more information on either of those questions at this time.
Thank you for the question. I think that we should have the quote in a few weeks. We don't actually have the $1 million to fix it, so we have to get the money. That may, and it may be more than that. I mean, I'm just using that sort of as a round number. One of the ways that we might think about funding that is the DRT bond we're planning to do this fall. I think we're getting the timeline together for that. That's a really likely place to fund that kind of big repair. So we wouldn't have that money until, October, November anyway. So, I think until we get the full quote and the funding for the full repair, leaving the pool operating would not delay the repairs. I also would say that we can't promise it'll be ready by next year, although obviously we would work really hard to do whatever we could during the building season this year, what we could do in the winter. and then what we could do in the early building season next year to get ready for Memorial Day opening. But we don't really have all the information about what that looks like yet.
Well, and I guess that also then kind of begs the question of the harder question of, is it worth it to save Bicentennial Pool, or do we start to look at other options for an outdoor pool? I mean, are there issues specific with the site? And yeah, I don't have a breadth of knowledge about pool construction that I would be able to provide this information, but is there a world in which it is more fiscally responsible, better service to the community if we are looking at building a pool elsewhere, looking at other sites and options as opposed to trying to repair Bicentennial?
I think I'd leave that question to the recreation department. It's real, I think, but I think, when you look at a major repair like this, I think that is an important thing to ask ourselves. Is it in the right place? Is this where we invest? Is it, worth the investment? It seems like a really responsible line of questioning to undertake.
Madam Chair, Councillor Cassett, if I may, Director Rinaldi and I are looking at a plan for community services and recreation, a strategic plan in fiscal year coming up. And so that may be something we can explore within that plan around, the demographics of the city, the use of the patterns of use, and where our investment makes best sense so that we best serve the community as a whole, which is not to say we shouldn't potentially have a site there, but hopefully we can make a better informed decision and bring that back to you all to make a better informed decision about that bigger picture approach. Hopefully at the mid-year, I would say next fiscal year.
Thank you. Yeah, and I appreciate the clarification there. It's not necessarily where else do we put it, but really that question, is this the best place or is there somewhere else that we should be looking? And then I had mentioned a couple questions also that I was wondering if we had follow up on. One was if we had started to explore some partnerships with other pools. Had we reached out to Country Club? I know we already do have some partnerships that we are working on with the community college, but how we maybe expand pool access this summer. There's a number of private pools that I heard that the Casa Solana pool had spaces, which they haven't in years. And so I'm just curious if we've started to explore some of these partnerships with private pools in the area that we might be able to help with the potential, lack of pool space that would happen if we do choose to not open Bicentennial.
Director Rinaldi, you.
Chair, councilors, we've been in touch with the other pools on a number of things. One is are they opening? Are they open? What's their capacity? What's their rules? So in the event we need to refer people over, but we also are talking to them about the other shared issue, which is lifeguards, and how we work together to try to, you guys got some extra ones from a class you did. Can you send them our way, and that type of stuff. So that communication, that line of communication is.
No, it's
I'm sorry, Chair,
Director
Councilor
Choi, yeah.
we also spoke specifically to the community college pool folks about their capacity, which they have a lot of capacity, and they encouraged us to let everyone know that. And I think some of the private pools are also in that position. So I think once this decision is made, we can begin a communication plan or communication action to the public, letting them know what their swimming options are, because we've, as Director Rinaldi says, we've been coordinating on options, and they're not as robust as they would be with one more pool open, but they exist, and I think we can send people to some very good options.
well. And then, Gino, I think that you had mentioned we are looking at opening up the kiddie pool at Chavez. Am I remembering that correctly?
Just the answer is yes. The issue is it's not immediately because it's in line to be I guess repaired, and it won't happen till I think the last conversation we had was later on in the season, and so we're planning on meeting. I know there's been a transition in Public Works. Planning on meeting with the new interim, Sam Barnett, to go over all the projects that we have and try to maybe narrow down some of the specific timelines and whatever obstacles are in the way so that we can move this thing forward as quickly as possible.
So then my understanding at this time, there's not a swimming option for young children at this moment. Am I correct? At least with the city?
Gas census, Chair. The answer would be no. We have a small pool at Fort Marcy that we're prepared to open. It wouldn't take much, and that would accommodate maybe one or two parents with, a couple of kids, or one parent with, kids, more kids from the same family. But it's minimal. It's minimal.
Okay, yeah, thank you. And I know, of course, there are numerous issues to balance and numerous priorities to balance when we look at the timeline for the repair. So I would not say, make this at the very, very top of the priority without being able to look at that list myself. But I do appreciate you meeting with Sam and really having that conversation. We are in the summer season, and people are really hankering to get out there. That said, it's a tough decision, but I believe I agree with Councilor Rivera that especially during a drought, it would just not be responsible of us to open up a pool that's leaking that much water. And it's really unfortunate timing because we are coming off of this incredibly hard year where everybody is really eager to get back to life and into, activities and seeing people. But I think that it's really hard to make the argument to open up a pool that would leak out, 400,000 gallons, I believe was in the memo of about how much water we'd be losing in a drought year. So tough choice, but I do think that's the hard, responsible decision that I would think we would have to make. So thank you all so much for being here and for answering our questions. I have no further questions at the moment.
Okay, we do have Christine Chavez on the panel if anybody wants to direct questions to her, and Councilwoman Villarreal, you are next on the list.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple follow-up questions. So Councilor Garcia indicated that staff didn't detect it in time, but from my understanding, they did detect it, and that's how they were able to determine that this needed to be taken care of. So I guess I was just curious, when did we actually detect that, staff?
I'm not sure who can answer that best.
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Villarreal, I'll take a stab at that, and maybe Director Wheeler can tell us as well. I think that Director Rinaldi, help me if I misspeak, but the recreation staff was aware of some leakage when the pool was filled previously, and they sort of dealt with it. I think Public Works may have heard about that. We didn't know the extent of it. When staff raised that concern with me in January, or just the need to open the pool and get on it, we immediately, Gino wasn't on yet, but I immediately spoke to Director Wheeler, and her Public Works staff immediately began to look at the scope of the problem. And it was like one of those houses that they call an onion that you start peeling away, and it's a little worse than you feared. So from my perspective, at least this year, since we all started working together, we were working in tight conjunction, and the information came out pretty swiftly as we were able to begin digging a little deeper into it.
Yeah, I mean, I believe that staff was keen on it because they know they watch it, they're there. So I don't think it's not a matter of not detecting it. I think it was more, and correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, we detected it, but there was also no funding to be able to, at that time, to be able to fix any what I would call like surface problems, not really digging into the like bigger issues that we didn't know about yet, because we'd need a professional to actually like dig down deeper. So
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Villarreal, that would be accurate according to my perception. I don't know, Director Rinaldi, if you wanted to add.
When staff were, I guess, aware that something wasn't right, that they began trying to find somebody to come and help them assess if there was indeed a problem and that they needed to, what they probably needed to do. And it wasn't until January that they were able to identify somebody that came in, and that was immediately when things transitioned. I don't think it was an issue of, oops, we have a problem, let's put more funding towards it, or let's get it repaired. I think they didn't really know the scope. And you can't expect them to. I mean,
Right.
These are pool, they're familiar with pools, they've been around pools, they know them, but they're not engineers, they're not the technical experts that Regina was able to bring in to help determine where we were and the extent of how bad this was. And I mean, it's kind of, maybe I shouldn't say, but I tend to do this. We had a leak, but the problem was like a slow leak. It just kept as you dig, and as Kira said, you go in more and more. We started to find out more and more of the issues, and it's an old pool. It's a very old pool. I know because I graduated in 1976. And every morning I wake up feeling old, but no, I'm not. But it's been around, and anybody that has worked on facilities in their career, like I have, and I know Regina and some of the others, these are not designed to last. And when you get to that point, you got to start dumping in money, and the city has a lot of buildings like that. And,
agree. I think that just from my inquiries, that once we start really digging, not like physically digging, we're going to find more things, y'all. I just think that we don't really know. And then I know that there's limits as to the experts and their availability. I also think that we just really need to take the time to do our due diligence. My guess is that pool needs to be taken out. And I'm not talking about the facility itself. Like there's still a lot of new pieces, the pumps, there's different infrastructure in there that I still think is usable. It's still good. It's just the actual physical pool, from what I understand, might need to be taken out and replaced, which would be a lot of money. So, and I'm actually okay with that. And I mean, I think my colleague, Councilwoman Cassett, she brought up, well, is that the right place? I don't know. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of young people in that area too, in District 1. And so I think it would be a loss if we didn't have a pool there. I don't know. I mean, I don't really have a full understanding about that, but I do think that we're probably going to find more that's wrong with that. And so my opinion is to not have this major leak, just because we really do want to have the pool open. And I know people have been sending us emails about that and talking to us. And while I do, am sympathetic about that, I do think the long-term goal is to make it a functional pool that's safe for everybody in the future. So I wouldn't want us to be losing gallons, hundreds of thousand gallons of water just because we want to keep it open for a couple months. So my other question though is, you had talked about the kiddie pool of Bicentennial, and that there weren't leaks in this portion. So did you all think about maybe having that portion open solely for kiddos? Not the main pool, we'd cover it, but then we'd have that other small kiddie pool open. I'm just curious if that's a possibility. I know there's staffing issues, but what do you all think? Have you thought about that possibility?
I'll let Director Rinaldi speak to the staffing challenges that would present, Madam Chair, Councilwoman Villarreal.
Present staffing challenges is because we're trying to schedule for 3 pools, and I think we have kind of moved in the direction of opening Salvador Pettis just because it's ready. And I look at the kiddie pool, but I mean, you have to go through the gauntlet of all the other stuff to get to that. Could we make it safe? I haven't really given it a lot of thought on how we might be able to do this. Could we find another entrance to come in and do that? And then again, we still don't know if we fill it up, whether there's any connection. There has to be a connection to the main system because we heat it and we treat it. It's through the filtration system, through the heating system. And so there is that connection. I mean, I can have the folks take a good look at it and see if there's any real practical, way to do it. But I couldn't tell you as a novice.
Mm.
But I have become more of an expert on this stuff, and I've concluded I'd rather have a cocktail by the pool than this stuff is tough. There's a lot of things, a lot of moving parts. I mean, and a lot of moving parts. I was surprised, and I appreciate everybody that has a hand in all of that stuff. It really makes you think, because I think across the city we have people doing all kinds of stuff, and we just think of what the stuff. We don't realize all that takes place. So we'll have them take a good look at it, and hopefully get you an answer relatively quickly.
Well, I mean, I it's just a thought, and I know there's more pieces that are part of that puzzle. I guess if we decide that that the Bicentennial doesn't make sense to open this season, I'd really like us to make sure that we have staffing so that all the other pools are open to the point where, like, almost to where we used to be. The days, the times, I mean, we've all of that has been condensed, for obvious reasons, but it would be nice to try to figure out to see how we could open the other pools so that they're more accessible to more people for this duration until we figure out Bicentennial. So I don't know if we have the answer to that yet, but I know staffing is a big piece. It would help if we could get people hired more quickly. I mean, if someone applies through HR and it takes 3 months, they're going to find another job. And that's exactly what happened. Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to find lifeguards at this point if we're taking so long. The summer is going to be over by the time they're told whether or not they have a job. So I think that's an issue. And then private pools, they pay better. They don't do drug testing. I heard today that the Casa Solana pool has 10 lifeguards for that small pool. So of course people would want to go there. So I don't know. And just there's a lot of factors into this. I think staffing is the biggest issue. Even if we didn't have a leak, I actually think staffing would still be an issue. So I just want to know maybe just the timeline of when we get more information about and making a decision, or in making a decision about fixing or completely redoing the pool at Bicentennial. Do you have an idea of like when we would have more information?
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, thank you for the question. The contractor's been working on a quote for 3 weeks, and they told us when they started, it would take them 6 weeks to give us the quote. So that'll be one contractor's quote that we'll have in a few weeks. So a month from now, we should be able to at least have some idea of what the scope of the repairs are, if that's your question.
Yeah, and I think even if we just did the, say we decided to have it open even with the leaks, we still would have to do those other fixes, the basic ones for the gutters, right? So that still would take time. So in a way, I actually think the summer pool time would actually be still shortened, right? It wouldn't actually start when it normally does. Obviously, it usually starts Memorial Day, right? And so
Yes,
we're already behind, but go ahead.
The proposal on the table before you is not to complete any additional repairs. The gutter repair would take 6 months, and other repairs would take many months. So you're right, we completely missed the season. So the proposal was to take it as is for this season, and then to work on additional repairs after we shut it down.
I'm not in favor of that. I actually think we need to be cognizant of those leaks. It's a lot of water. And still, I feel like there's going to be things uncovered as we continue. So that's kind of where I stand. I know we had a motion, but I'm willing to change it if we need to, because it sounds like a lot of us don't feel like we should be opening the pool. So I yield the floor. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Rivera, did you want to ask questions of Christine Chavez?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Since she's available, yes, and made the effort to be here. Thank you, Christine. You do a lot of work on conservation, and just wanted to know really what the sense is on how long the drought may potentially last. Are we looking a year? Are we looking just a couple weeks into the summer? Do you have any sense of that?
Mr. Chair, can you hear me okay?
Yes. Madam
Okay.
Chair.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, thank you very much for the question. It's very timely because today we just launched the first day of the Next Generation Water Summit. And hopefully all of you can just register and watch some of the sessions that came out today and throughout the rest of the week. But today was focusing on drought. And so we had climate experts and a lot of different experts on drought talking about the fact that we are going to have challenges, period, moving forward. This isn't a short-term thing. I mean, some people think even because we had the rain, just this past week that demand will go down. I mean, it is responsive to weather for sure, but these challenges are going to continue moving forward. There's just going to be, less water to deal with and decisions that we're all going to have to make related to outdoor water use and those types of things. So no, from my position, I would say this is not going to last a couple weeks. This is sort of needs to be built into our mindset moving forward.
Very good, thank you. So even even small leaks are considered large at this point, I imagine.
Councilor Rivera, I would say yes. We're really taking a hard stance on leaks this summer during our high demand season and working with our residents, our businesses to address leaks. And so from my personal, from our perspective, it's always nice when the city leads by example with those types of things.
Yeah, I agree with you. And thank you for being here and answering those questions. It was just a few, but thank you for doing that. Appreciate it.
No problem.
Okay, I have a few questions.
Can I ask, I just wanted to ask Christine specifically about that leakage. I'm just wondering, someone asked or told me that this leakage is not a big deal. And if we could offset the leakage, by fixing 100 households of drippy faucets. Is that a true assessment?
Mrs. Chair, Councilor Villarreal, I mean, that's a hard thing to answer without really looking at what that equates to. I mean, if a home were leaking at this rate, that would be a very, very serious leak. Businesses, we expect the leaks to be larger, but then again, I think the ending statement for us is just, any leak right now is something that should be addressed. And so we're working closely with Regina to see if there's anything that we can help with in the assessment. But even fixing city leaks, might be a bigger priority for us moving forward. And maybe we can help with some of the funding to try to address some of those things. But this is a leak of such magnitude that, you're all discussing all of the different issues around it, but it is complex. It has lots of different sides. So mine, of course, is going to be pretty biased right now during these very, very dry conditions and in the middle of the drought. And right before we're about to hit a pretty hard campaign with the public on fixing leaks, not wasting water and really trying to look at outdoor water demand.
Thank you, Christine. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Okay. So there are no additional repairs as part of what's being presented to us, but there have been some repairs. So do we think that impacted the amount of water that's leaking at all? Or I know, and I understand, I guess, that the repairs that we did do didn't fix the leaks. Even if they might have improved the situation a little bit, it's still leaking, correct?
Madam Chair, that's correct. A rough estimate, our optimistic estimate is that it might reduce the leak by 20%, the repair we did.
Okay. Okay, that's helpful. Yeah, and I guess, I guess I don't have any more questions. I just have, it just seems like one of the things that we're going to have to figure out is how do you evaluate whether you fix this pool or you start to look at where you might put another pool, and whether this is the right place for that pool. And so that's something I don't quite understand how we'll go about determining. And I think we all should be realistic too, that I think Director Rinaldi said, we have a lot of buildings in these kind of deferred maintenance positions, and we have a lot, so therefore we have a lot of deferred maintenance. We also have a lot of capital projects that we're still funding and seeking funding for. So if we were to build a new pool, it seems like it'd have to get in line, and it could take years, because I would assume that it would be a pretty hefty price tag. Is that thinking seem right? I mean, this is not something, if we decided, at the end of the summer that we wanted to put a new pool, we wanted to put it on the south side, that's really just the beginning of it. We'd have to figure out how to site it, and it's millions of dollars, and we'd have to seek that money. And, we still have a fire station to build, and we've got airport stuff. And we've got all these other projects that we're still working on.
Madam Chair, from the Public Works Capital Project perspective, I think you're exactly right that a big new pool would take some planning and some time and some years. I think that's exactly right.
Yeah, so it's not something that's going to happen quickly. And then that gets me into a thing of, once we know what the scope of the repairs are with this pool, maybe we do, if it's, I don't know, maybe we do want to make the repairs to this pool and then start the long-term planning about another pool, so that we don't find ourselves in this situation again where we're rolling into the summer season and we don't have a good place for kids to swim. So that's, and of course, there's never a shortage of things we need to do. I guess, I have to agree that I think the city needs to lead by example. And even if we have reduced the leakage by 20%, it's still a lot of water. And I would agree with the sentiment that's been expressed here that that alone should require us to close the pool for this summer and, begin the work of finding out for certain the scope of the repairs that need to be done here and, what we want to do for the future. And I guess just one other question. Right now, we only have staff to open 3 pools. That's correct. Am I right about that?
Madam Chair, that's correct.
So even if we were to decide to open, let the leaks happen and open Bicentennial, we'd have to close Salvador Perez in order to do that, correct?
Madam Chair, or Fort Marcy. One
Or
of the,
Fort Marcy. Okay. And we are not, we don't know exactly when we will have the staffing capacity to, if we wanted to, open all 4 pools, correct?
Madam Chair, that's correct.
Okay. All right. So I do think, we do have a motion with no recommendation. It seems to me we do have enough information and there is sentiment here to make a recommendation that we not open Salvador Perez. But I think certainly we can let the vote on this motion direct the action of the committee. But it seems like we could recommend, and I think, several of us have said this is something, even with the information we have now, that we shouldn't be doing. All right, any other discussion on this motion?
I guess point clarification.
All right, Councilor Garcia.
So we've got the resolution which asks for us to open up the pool. Then we've got a proposed amendment that asks for us to close the pool and pursue a permanent long-term solution to repair Bicentennial. And I'm in agreement with everybody that's spoken that we need to keep it closed and not necessarily pursue a permanent long-term solution to repair, but pursue the thorough evaluation, and that way we can make a determination. Do we repair? Do we look at other avenues? So I guess how would we then move forward? Because we can't necessarily approve the resolution, or do we approve the resolution, make an amendment, our own kind of unofficial amendment?
Good question. Jesse's got his hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Jesse, to the rescue.
Oops, hold on. There we go. So the amendment that's in your packet would do what I believe you were discussing, which is keep the pool closed for the season. So if that's the direction you wanted to go, then my suggestion would be to approve the resolution as amended. And then in the final version, we'd replace the language that's in the resolution with what is there in the amendment.
Except that what we do here is not final. So it would just be the Quality of Life Committee is recommending closing the pool for the summer season. And I think Councilor Garcia, if you don't like the ending part of that language, we could just strike it where it says, come up with a plan, and we could have something ready at governing body to better articulate what the next steps are. But at least this committee would be taking a stand. But of course, as we know, nothing's final until the governing body votes it. Councilwoman Villarreal, you've had your hand up, sorry.
Madam Chair, so just to clarify, do we amend the amendment? Even though it's not ours?
Yeah. So I would, I just need to pull it up here. Sorry. I think what we do is we have a motion to approve the resolution, and then we have a motion to adopt the amendment that would close the pool, striking that tail language if Councilor Garcia thinks that's something we should do. and there are enough votes to support that. And then we vote on that amendment, and then we'd be passing the resolution as amended. Jesse, do I have that right?
Yes, I believe so.
So in the fact that we have a motion and a second, we need to withdraw that first.
We either need to withdraw it or vote on it. Depends what the motion maker wants to do.
Madam Chair, I'm happy to withdraw it because I think we do. I'm happy to make those changes where we kind of strike that line. I don't know if we can do that, but sure, because I do think we need to take out the language that says to repair Bicentennial, because we don't know. I think that potentially commits us to something that's the unknown right now.
So I withdraw my second.
Okay, and so then I think what we need to do is move to approve the motion and have a second, and then we'll immediately make another motion to amend the resolution.
So I'll make a motion to approve the resolution as presented, and then we'll do the second amendment change, right?
Yes. Is there a second to approve the resolution?
Second.
All right, and then is there a motion to amend the resolution?
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to amend the proposed amendment to strike the last 4 words. And those words are to repair Bicentennial pool.
Okay, so the amendment will read, keep the Bicentennial pool closed for the 2021 summer season and pursue a permanent long-term solution. Am I correct in that?
Second again.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to amend the resolution to keep Bicentennial pool closed for the 2021 summer season and pursue a permanent long-term solution. We have a motion and a second. If we could take a roll call on the amendment only.
Counselor Jamie Cassett,
Yes.
Counselor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Chris Rivera,
Yes.
Councilwoman Renee Villarreal,
Yes.
Chair Carol Romero Worth.
Yes. All right, so now we have an amended resolution and we need, and are there other changes the committee would like to make? All right, I think we can take a roll call on the resolution as amended.
Counselor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Chris Rivera,
Yes.
Councilwoman Renee Villarreal,
Yes.
Counselor Jamie Cassett,
Yes.
Chair Carol Romero Worth.
Yes. All right. With that, we will move on to so the amended resolution passes. We will move on to item E. Councilor Garcia, you also pulled this item.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I'm sorry, just for everybody who may not be looking at an agenda, sorry about that. Request for approval of volunteer station agreement with the Boys and Girls Club of Santa Fe. No financial responsibility for the foster grandparent program, Boys and Girls Club of Santa Fe. And we have Anaya Alareed, I think, is here on this item. So, Councilor Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Ms. Alareed, for being here with us. I'm sorry I've got to keep you here, but I do have to recuse myself from this matter as I work for the federal agency that hosts the foster grandparent program. So I am going to step away from the meeting for a moment, Madam Chair.
Great. Jennifer, will you text Councilor Garcia when we've finished? And do we have a motion to approve this item?
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Councilwoman Villarreal, a second by Councilor Cassett. Is there discussion on this item? Seeing none, we'll move for a vote. Jennifer, if you could take the roll.
Counselor Chris Rivera,
Yes.
Councilwoman Renee Villarreal,
Yes, thanks, Anya, for being here.
Counselor Jamie Cassett,
Yes.
Chair Carol Romero-Worth.
Yes. All right, that item has been approved. If we could text Councilor Garcia, and we'll wait while he rejoins to move on to our presentations. We have 2 tonight, but I want Councilor Garcia to be present before we move forward.
Hi, Maria. It's so weird that we don't like talk to each other when we're on Zoom, but in person we would. Sorry, I just think that's kind of funny.
Hello.
Okay, Councilor Garcia has rejoined us, and we will move to our presentations. As I mentioned, we do have 2 tonight. We're going to start with the Santa Fe Public Library update, and we have our Director of Public Libraries, Maria Sanchez Tucker, with us tonight. Welcome, and you have the floor. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Madam Chair and councilors. I'm going to share my screen with you. Are you able to see that?
Yes.
Thank you so much for allowing me to provide a quick update on the work of the Santa Fe Public Library. I always enjoy talking about the wonderful work the staff of the public library are doing for the community. So I just want to give you a quick update on some of the work that we have accomplished in this last year. Our staff work very hard. We check out an average of 15,000 physical library materials each month. That's an average, and our digital use continues to increase. We have premium digital services, books, ebooks, audiobooks, and movies that many of our community are checking out and using daily. Our staff,
Maria,
yes.
Can you put the view so it's just the one screen, because we can see the next slide also next to it.
Oh, sure.
And we can see your notes, so I just wanted to let you know that.
Oh, thank you for letting me know that. Let me take it off presenter view. Okay, great. Thank you. And we also have average 1,500 reference questions each month that we answer over the phone or by email from the community. We've also installed a new library catalog system that is more cost effective and also has better features for the community to be able to easily browse and check out books, and also finding lists and recommendations on our website. We partnered with the Master Gardeners this year to provide a self-serve seed library, and the Master Gardeners were able to give out 900 seed packets throughout the community at their 5 locations. So that was a great partnership that we've worked on this year. And then we'll continue to explore our partnerships with Master Gardeners. We're also working very closely with the Santa Fe Children's Museum. We have an IMLS funded project that we're working on to support school readiness through libraries and museums. And we provided some in-person story times at the Santa Fe Children's Museum camps. Also, we provide an average of 500 monthly take and make activity kits. And so our families really love these different activities that we provide each month. And we work with community partners, the Museum of International Folk Art, and other partners. The Santa Fe Children's Museum have also provided kits that we distribute. We also have received a Public Library Association intern. So we are currently recruiting a 16 through 19-year-old to come work at the library this summer. And we're hoping that they can help us with an outreach plan to better serve our community. And so hopefully we'll be able to announce an intern, our intern very soon. We are also able to launch the COHS high school program. This is for adults who are seeking a high school diploma, and this is through a partnership with the state library. And we just are about to award a scholarship to our first student. So we'll be happy to see how that pilot program goes and how we can help with high school education for adults. We successfully completed an NEA Big Read grant, which I'm really pleased to say was very successful. Although we were in a virtual world, we had a grant from the NEA, and it was a $15,000 grant, and it was generously matched by the Friends of the Library so that we would be able to apply for the grant. And we were also able to get support from the Santa Fe Community Foundation, Sally Bingham, the Santa Fe New Mexican, and the City of Santa Fe Arts and Culture Department sponsored arts workshops and some advertising for us. So altogether, we had 44 programs. We had 28 community partners involved in the project. We gave out 250 books to Santa Fe High and Capitol High School. We gave out 250 books to the community and 500 books to elementary students. And we had 555 Big Read books checked out. And that was just the adult book. We haven't captured all of our statistics yet for the project, but a report is forthcoming on all of our statistics. And then we also had a youth component to our Big Read. We had a book selected by Juji Morales, Dreamers, and The Only Road by local author Alexandra Diaz. And Juji Morales presented online to the school district, and I think we had about 20 classes participate. About 1,000 students were able to watch her presentation, and it was just really inspiring. We had a teacher who really thanked us for giving out books to her classroom, and the Spanish-speaking bilingual program really was inspiring to many students, and they felt very appreciative of having that aspect of a bilingual program in their school. And Alexandra Diaz visited the ATC school and did a program with the school there, and you can see the picture that they made a banner for her. And so our school programs went really well, and we look forward to another Big Read where we all come together, read a book together, discuss, and share in programming. One of the other really rewarding programs that we participated in was a book club with the Penitentiary of New Mexico. And so we met for 3 Tuesday afternoons for an hour with these gentlemen who participated and read the book with us. And they were very insightful and they were very inspiring. And so we're really pleased that our librarians are going to continue this partnership with the penitentiary and hold book clubs and programs for penitentiary there. We launched a new library catalog. You can see that this is just one of the views of what it looks like, and it has more of the visual searching mechanism. So it's more like a Netflix when you look through your books type system. And then a really big project is that we are implementing a new integrated library system, which is the brains of the operation of the library. It's our database, it's how we check out books, it's how we catalog books. We've had the same system here at the Santa Fe Public Library since the 1990s, and it was just time to find a more cost-effective, better product that's easier for staff to use, easier for staff to navigate. And so we're really excited, a little nervous because it's a big project, but on June 7th, we're going live. And so hopefully it'll be a smooth transition, and hopefully the public will not really notice that we have a new system. Hopefully it'll only be more positive for the staff who use it on the back end. We also were able to create a partnership with Santa Fe Public School, where the kids can access our digital collection seamlessly through their Chromebooks that they have through their school. And so we received this report from the Santa Fe Public School that 2,621 accounts were created in the schools, 6,382 books were accessed, and 2,677 hours of reading time took place. And so this is a partnership that we will continue to cultivate and add more resources for students so they can access books easily through their Chromebooks. But we were really pleased to see the use and the availability of our digital books at the school district. And then we launched our Tech Connect program, where we are now checking out laptops and hotspots to the public. We had 27 laptops and 36 hotspots checked out since May 7th. And so it was a slow rollout. We're going to start marketing and getting the word out to more people in the community, doing more outreach and partnerships, getting the word out to our partners on people who may need access to a laptop if they have a training or they need to do an application. So please help spread the word that this is available. And then right off the heels of the Big Read, our success with the Big Read, we launched our summer reading program. So our summer reading program officially launched this week. And so far we have 93 signed up for the program, and it's sponsored by the Friends of the Santa Fe Public Library. They always do a wonderful job supporting us so that we are able to give out prizes and incentives and really support kids wanting to read throughout the summer. At the end of the summer, we'll have a magic show at Swan Park, and we'll have two, one in the evening for working families and one during the day. And we'll have a grand prize raffle for the kids who finish the summer reading program. And we have a full schedule. This is just June's schedule, but you can find all of this information on the Santa Fe Public Library website. But we've put together outdoor story times, Zoom story times, a STEM project with STEM Santa Fe, where we're rising 5th through 7th graders will participate in STEM activities on Saturdays. We're also going to have outdoor crafts. So there's a variety of activities to keep kids engaged this summer through our summer reading program. And we held our first outdoor story time on Monday, and it was really rewarding to be back with our wonderful young library users, and they had so much fun. And I think the librarians might have had even more fun getting back with their patrons. So it was great to be able to use our outdoor space. That's one of the things I'd like to do, is look at our space at Southside Library. It's very beautiful, but we need to make it more user-friendly for our outdoor spaces. And so I'm looking into a project to think about ways that we can refresh the outdoors to make that space really user-friendly. And then we had a great vaccination and bike event on May 22nd. You wouldn't ordinarily think that those two would go together, but Chainbreaker Collective reached out to us and asked if we could do a bike repair and bike raffle. And we said, sure. And so they outreached to a lot of families, and they decided to find out if we could also make it a vaccination event. And through a great partnership with our community health and safety department and the DOH and Chainbreaker Collective, we had over 300 people vaccinated that day at the Southside Library. And so books were given away, free ice cream was there, 80 kids signed up for summer reading. We had craft kits to give out and free books. And so it was just a really great way. You know, libraries are a trusted location, trusted space in the community, and this is the type of activity that we should be doing at libraries all of the time. And so it was just a great partnership. We'll have a follow-up vaccination events on June 12th, so those who participated can get their second dose easily. And just thank you once again. I'm very grateful to our dedicated library staff. They work so diligently. They work to support each other. We have done everything collaboratively with our short-staffed situation that we have right now. We're working to fill positions, and hopefully we can get positions that we've lost through retention or through retirement or resignation, and we can get some of these filled and get our staff supported and up and running again. But we've really worked collaboratively to meet a lot of goals this year. We've taken on a lot of projects that we were able to do during this time where our buildings were closed. And I just see a lot more great things coming from our library staff. So I'm very, very appreciative of the work they do. And I'm pleased to announce, you are the first people to hear this news, that our library buildings we're planning to reopen July 7th. And so we'll be open to in-person browsing. You can pick up your holds. We'll have computer use limited to 1 hour. We have been working on facilities, making sure that they have all COVID safe measures in place. We'll have limited seating. We'll hold off on public meeting and study rooms at this point in the phase, but we'll add those in at a later phase. And then we'll continue with outdoor programming, virtual programming. Our Wi-Fi and hotspots and laptops will continue. Outdoor Wi-Fi is available. And then we'll continue curbside service for those who need or request the service. But we will allow people in the building. So it's very exciting. We will still have some limited hours, Tuesday through Saturday, 10 to 6 is the plan. And then as soon as we are back to full staffing and staffing can allow, we will increase our hours as possible. So this is very exciting news. I know that you probably have received a few questions about when the libraries were opening. We do too. And so we're working with Mr. Herndon to get a press release out and to make some announcements about this. And with that, I will answer any questions or stand for questions. Thank you so much.
Great. And if you can stop sharing your screen, that'll help me. Very exciting news. I think we all have gotten emails about when the libraries were going to be opening, and I was going to ask you, in fact. So very, very exciting. But this presentation also demonstrates how much work and how much you've been available to the community, even when you haven't had the buildings open. So thank you for that work. We do have a number of questions from committee. I think Councilor Cassett, your hand was up first.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And thank you so much, Maria, for being here. And that is very exciting news about the library opening. That is one that I've absolutely received that question numerous times. So thank you so much for all your hard work. I know that it takes a lot to get a facility, let alone 3, open for a COVID safe world. I just had a couple questions. One, I was curious about how the laptop lending program is going. I know when you had presented that to us, we were all like, okay, how is this going to work? What happens if they get damaged? What happens if somebody doesn't return it? So I was curious how that program has been, even though it's been a bit of a slow rollout.
Surprisingly, very well. We haven't had any issues with people not returning or fine issues. One of the things we do have is the need for more training and use of technology. And so that's what we're finding, is that people may be able to borrow the laptop, but they may not be able to understand how to hook up the hotspot or make it work with their computer, that kind of thing. So fortunately, it's going well. We're still assessing, and that's why we wanted to keep the rollout slow and make sure that we had any of the issues taken care of. And then if things came up, we would adjust them along the way. But so far, so good. I'm sure that we will have some that do not return, but we hired a consultant to help us think of every possible scenario and to try to set them up so, they will turn off if you don't return them after a certain period. Our hotspots will also do the same thing. So we do have some security measures in place. And I think it's been great. Some people have just come in and use it. We have an express laptop that you can just use at the library, outside the library if you need to do a quick something. We also have curbside printing. So we have been, providing library services just in trying to be as safe as possible for both our staff and the community.
That's good to hear about the curbside printing. I was not aware of that. And I know that's been another one of those questions I've received. In terms of the tech support, has that been something that your librarians have been taking on, and have they been able to keep up with the demand of people needing that support?
They have, and the librarians we have set out some tables outside so that we can work with patrons as they come in and have questions. And so we've either been able to walk people through over the phone or help them if they bring the computer in and walk them through. But that's one of the things we would like to do, is just offer more classes, offer more bilingual information. So those are areas that we are continuing to improve.
And then my last question has to do with, right before the pandemic hit, I've been having the discussion of doing books and babies programs on the weekends, because it was that, early exposure to reading, and they had only been offered during the week. And now that programming is coming back, I know this was something that a lot of families were really excited about, and I'm curious if we can start to look at that opportunity to be bringing that back. And I believe it was going to be the bilingual books and babies, which was a lot of fun. So
yes, I'm in conversation with Jordan Wax to see if he can continue. And then we would like to start out an outdoor books and babies again. And we're really looking to strengthen our early childhood programming. And so hopefully we can even have more extensions of books and babies and really strengthen what we're providing to the community.
And I lied, one more question. So just thinking about the library spaces, Southside has a pretty good outdoor space. Maine
has we're trying it in the front. We had some Mexican folklorico dancers in the front of Maine, and it worked out really well. So we're going to try story time in the front of the library. We're also going to do a youth program with the Pride during the Pride event, and do a youth program outside in the front. So we're going to see how that goes, and we'll assess. Lafarge is a little bit trickier. Lafarge is one of the we have to concentrate more time because of the capacity issues and the space issues. So we haven't really been able to figure out how to safely do outdoor programming, but we're still looking at it.
Would there be a possibility, I know it's a little bit more challenging because there's a travel component, but would there be a possibility to utilize city parks for some of the programming that are close by? I know that there's the park very close to Southside. There's, parks relatively close to Lafarge.
We considered it, and then we just thought if we were going to give a lot of books away and things like that, and prizes, that we really wanted to be available close to the library. So we are going to have the big event at Swan Park. So parks are still part of it, and it may become that parks become a future outreach point when we have more staffing, and maybe next year in the summer, just to make library programs more available to the public.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Thank you to you and your team for your work, and continuing to provide those services throughout the pandemic. I know that it's really been a help to the community. I know a lot of people who have really appreciated the library services, and just still having that opportunity for reading, maybe even a little bit more opportunity for reading than normal. So I greatly appreciate the work of you and your team. Thanks so much.
Great. Councilwoman Villarreal, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I really don't have any questions. I just wanted to thank Maria and her team for keeping people inspired and creating joy during this hard time. Even though it was virtual, I just feel like you all have done an incredible job, and your presentation made me want to cry thinking about all the things that you put together, really at the last minute to try to be able to support the community. So, and I think the NEA, the Big Read, was very successful. I participated in a few things and so impressed, and it felt like almost like in person. But I just wanted to thank you. So
much.
That's all.
I really appreciate it. It was really a fun project. Thank you.
Councilor Rivera.
Thank you, Ms. Sanchez Tucker. I live by the Southside Library. I drive by there daily. So I see the amount of people that are in the parking lot using free Wi-Fi and taking advantage of all the services that you talked about in your presentation. So I do see that and appreciate that tremendously. What I did want to ask is in regards to reopening, since again, to my knowledge, anyone under 12 still cannot receive the vaccine. So are there going to be special procedures or protocols with regards to the kids section?
We are just going to continue to ask anybody within the library building to wear masks and to, we're taking away all of the toys and things like that, kids would touch and that kind of thing. But, fortunately, the South Side Library has a lot of room to space out. And so, we'll just continue to monitor capacity and hopefully people can, practice social distance and wear masks and be considerate of each other's space. But I think several libraries have opened up, so it's fortunate for us to be able to look at best practices, and they've been able to do so safely. So we're trying to incorporate all of those practices into our opening plan.
Well, I don't know if you heard tonight, but it looks like our kiddie pools, the two that we have in Santa Fe, aren't going to be open this season. So I imagine a lot of people are going to be looking to the libraries for all your programming. So appreciate everything you're doing, like I said, and I know you're going to do everything possible to make sure everybody's safe. So thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Counselor Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Maria, for the update. I'm excited to have the libraries open again. And just please thank your team for, all the work that they put in over this last year, the pivoting that they've had to do to provide the services to our community members. It's been great. I mean, we've done the whole pick up the books on the curb, and it's been flawless. So I'm happy that we're now turning the page, so to speak, and we're going to allow folks indoors. And as Councilor Rivera said, please, I'll caution you that you'll probably see a wave of interest over the summer from folks, and so that's a good thing. That's definitely a good thing. But thank you again, and best of luck with all the openings.
Thank you,
Madam Chair.
We're going to try to be as creative and try to make the summer as fun as and keep learning fun as possible. So thank you so much.
Great. Again, thank you for all your work. It really is tremendous. Thank you for being here tonight. Really enjoyed hearing about all the things that you've been doing. So lots of gratitude. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, counselors. I really appreciate it.
With that, we move on to our second presentation. We have our land use director, Eli Isaacson, with us to talk about growth management planning. And I believe, Director Isaacson, you have maybe a PowerPoint or something to share with us?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the council. I do have a slide deck. I don't know if I have permission to share my screen. Oh, I do. Fantastic. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Oh, actually, hold on one second. I need to move it into another screen. Let me try this again. Can you guys see that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for bearing with me. So I'm here this evening to talk about growth management planning, planning for growth here in our city. The question is, what is growth management planning? Growth management planning is a type of growth management plan is a type of a comprehensive plan that can be used to measure the impact new growth will have on a community. and define policies, regulations by which that impact can be managed. And so, growth management planning recognizes that managing growth will enhance quality of life by identifying locations for various land uses of future growth, determining proper scale, density, and intensity of future land uses, establishing appropriate pace of future growth based off the natural and financial resources required to sustain growth. I think growth management planning is geared towards concentrating development really towards existing or new urban centers, where we have access to things like trails, transit services, in an attempt to reduce automobile dependence and really encourage and promote bicycle and pedestrian movement. And then really looking to promote development that provides a range of housing options and addresses community-wide needs around housing affordability, which is obviously something that's very important to the city right now. So growth management in the 1999 general plan, as many of you know, chapter 4 of the general plan speaks directly to growth management. I think some of you have probably read that section. And so, the 1999 plan establishes a framework for responding to challenges and opportunity presented by our city's growth. The growth management plan should, be organized to respond to the community's specific vision, goals, and objectives. And we'll likely discuss many of the same themes. And so, I've pulled out the sort of growth management themes from the general plan here on the screen. Things like quality of life, urban form, transportation alternatives, water, sustainable growth, regional planning perspectives, and then doing sort of a quick some research and an audit of other growth management plans that have been done in other communities. You start to see similar themes, emerge around ideas around livability, housing, safety and wellness, economic health, community design, and environmental quality. So why is growth management planning important? The city of Santa Fe is a truly unique and remarkable place to live. Our community's quality of life and livability continues to attract new residents. And so that, because we're such a desirable community, we're starting to see issues around growth and pressures being put on our community by people coming to Santa Fe from other parts of the country. And so really looking at a smart and inclusive growth management plan to ensure that this population growth provides equitable access to future employment opportunities, supports housing choice and affordability, and also preserves our city's vital cultural and natural resources. And so some of the ideas, that growth management planning will look at are, the long-term outcomes of unharnessed growth, the social, environmental, and fiscally sustainable strategies that growth will require and growth planning will require, maintaining a sense of place while accommodating the needs of this expanding and diversifying population, and then ensuring that development processes are equitable and balance the needs of our entire community. So looking at some trends, some demographic trends, we see, our population over the last 10 years has grown by over 15,000, but our annual population growth has sort of tapered off and sort of risen and fallen recently in the last few years. I think what we're also seeing is our population is getting older in some ways. This is actually something that the growth management section of the general plan predicted, is that we're starting to see not only smaller household size, but also the median age of our city increasing. And so if you look at 2010 versus 2020, you start to see more and more census tracts are actually having a higher percentage of residents over the age of 65. And so, what does that mean for housing? If we look at housing affordability in the city, we start to see that housing values are going up while median household incomes are staying relatively flat. We also see an increase in owner-occupied housing while vacancy rates are staying, virtually zero, a functional rate of zero. And so that's really putting a lot of strain on our local housing market. If we look at trends in employment, we start to see that our sort of largest employment industries are education and healthcare, hospitality, retail, professional services, and public administration. Where we have less jobs in our city are in the areas of financial services, tech, and manufacturing. And so, I think there's, this tells me that there's a need to diversify our local economy. The unemployment rate on the right of the screen is a little misleading, obviously, in 2020 because of the impacts of the pandemic, but you can see we have a pretty tight labor market under normal circumstances, but we're not necessarily seeing a lot of job growth in some of the higher paying industries of the employment sector. We're starting to see increases in number of residents with bachelor's degrees, but if we look at a lot of our largest employers, we see that a lot of our largest employers are in the hospitality sectors. And so there's a disconnect there, right? We have highly educated people, but not necessarily a lot of job growth in areas that pay wages that support people, say, with student loan debt and things like that. So I think this picture points to a picture of Santa Fe that's, a city that's becoming a little older and maybe has less opportunity for people in the age group of, say, 20 to 40, young people, young professionals who want to come to Santa Fe and raise their families. So,
Madam Chair, excuse me, Eli. Madam
Yes.
Chair, can I ask a quick question on that last thing? Thank you.
Absolutely.
What does the state of New Mexico fit in as an employer?
So I'm sure they're a significant employer on here. You see the city of Santa Fe and Santa Fe County. This is data that was pulled from mysidewalk.com. It's something we use in economic development and community development. The source of this information is the New Mexico Partnership. So I'm not sure why they're not appearing on this list, but my guess would be that they are a significant employer, because if we go back and look at this chart here, our public administration makes almost 10% of our workforce. And so that's not just the city and the county, but I think that's also includes the state as well.
And I don't know if you're going to capture it in another slide or not, but there are places like Los Alamos where many of our workforce goes up to, yet they live here. So is there a way to capture that anyway?
So I don't have that. I don't have any data on that in this presentation, but I think, Counselor, that's an excellent point. And I think we actually have, we have a displaced workforce, and we have folks that commute into our city from outlying communities in the county or as far as Rio Rancho, that are sort of taking their wages back to their communities where they do their shopping and recreating. And then we also have the situation that you described, where we have folks commuting from Santa Fe into employment sectors or into employers like Lanel and others that are living here and working there. I think a lot of that workforce is actually captured in this scientific and professional category, this 13.1% of our workforce. And I think a lot of those jobs are lab jobs of Santa Fe residents commuting up the hill to go to work.
All right, and then just one last question on a previous slide, but how much of the population increase can be attributed to annexation?
That's an excellent question. And based off of, this large increase in population, but this sort of, population growth rate hovering around 0.5%, I would assume that a fair amount of that population increase is due to annexation, but I don't have concrete information on that.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Sure. Go ahead, Eli. You still have more to present, correct?
I do. So switching gears here, thinking about public engagement and the growth management planning process. The process will be an open process that challenges our thinking of the future and will be inclusive to participants from all walks of life in all areas of the city, which I think is extremely important when we come to community engagement process, and really sort of guiding that process by the goals of educating, engaging, and empowering our community. Efforts will be made to include new voices in the community planning process and use methods of outreach that provide equitable means of engagement. I mean, I think, we haven't done we haven't done any real significant long-range planning in the city since the late 90s. So there's a whole generation of Santa Feans that had not really participated in a meaningful conversation about a vision for the future of our city. And so I think that one of the challenges we'll have with this is really trying to engage a different set of people, a different set of residents to really get them involved in shaping the future of this plan and our growth management strategies moving forward. So what have we done recently to address growth in the city? As you alluded to, Councilor Rivera, we've done a fair amount of annexation in the southern part of the city to provide land for future growth. We've established future land use designations and zoning designations that we use in our entitlement approvals process and rezoning applications. We've created zoning overlays like the Midtown Link, and we are right now in the process of looking at redevelopment of the Midtown campus. We've done several planning efforts and planning documents such as the Southwest Area Master Plan and the 25-year Sustainable Santa Fe Plan. We've also done a series of small area plans like the Santa Fe River Corridor Plan. We've done things in our foothills and escarpment areas to limit mountainside development. We've done a lot in the area of green building ordinances, including the adoption of HERS and WERS, which are energy and water efficiency rating systems. The water conservation team is continually doing water planning and looking at conservation measures, producing 40 to 80-year plans. There's also a stormwater management plan to protect our arroyos. And then we do capital improvement planning as well as impact fee capital improvement planning as well, to try to identify projects where we would spend resources to support future growth in the city around infrastructure and facilities. So part of growth management planning is really looking at infill and trying to identify the benefits of density. One of the outcomes of density are walkable and complete neighborhoods. Complete neighborhoods are those that support a sense of community, that really encourage walking and provide for active lifestyles, with access to recreation, parks, trails, and open space. What we hear a lot from folks is that some of our most desirable areas of the city, which are sort of downtown and in the east side, are also some of our most dense, right? And with densities ranging from 21 to 29 units per acre. And so density done right can actually create really wonderful, walkable, active neighborhoods that also lower the reliance of families on automobiles, which contributes to the affordability equation, but also really helps helps us achieve our goals around carbon neutrality and sustainability. Again, growth management planning really has a lot to do with housing and housing choice, and connecting housing to employment centers to enhance livability, and also we're reducing the requirement of use of automobiles. We want residential development occurring in a variety of settings, ranging from residential neighborhoods to more mixed-use neighborhoods that accommodate commercial and residential uses within close proximity. These are just some charts and a chart showing where the revenue is going into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and a lot of that revenue that's gone into the trust fund in the last 3 or 4 years is coming from the high level of development that we have going on in the city. And so if we look at the residential pipeline, residential development pipeline here on the right side of the screen, you see the amount of new housing development that's happening in the city. That is creating both challenges for the city in terms of managing growth, but also presenting opportunities in terms of what it's doing to support the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. We're looking at development that supports multimodal transit. We're really looking at developing land use patterns that are adapting to changes in demographics, economics, technology, culture, and climate. Santa Fe, we need to design streets and transportation networks for pedestrians that promote a really high quality of life. Good street networks are balanced by reliable, efficient transit systems and multimodal transportation opportunities to ease traffic congestion. So, another part of growth management obviously is resource conservation. The city has been committed to water conservation since the 1970s. The conservation group now is, this last year worked with Santa Fe County Utilities, initiated a community-informed planning study to develop long-range water resource management plans extending out as far as 2100. That process is scheduled to be completed by the end of 2024, at which point it will be evaluated, refined, and additional planning cycles will be done as necessary in future years. I think another part of the growth management plan is really looking at it from a regional perspective. This was something that was identified in the 1999 general plan, and I think will be crucial to any future growth management plans, is really looking for opportunities to better coordinate growth management between the city and the surrounding county. Looking at planning at the regional scale, increasingly important as our economic land use and transportation patterns change over the previous decades. And through a regional planning approach, we can achieve a more balanced pattern of growth for the whole region as urban and rural areas of our region develop in support of one another. So next steps with the growth management plan, summer of 21, we'll be working to draft a scope of work, issue an RFP. That this fall we'll evaluate the proposals and look to select a consultant team to help us out, and then later this year or beginning of next year really start the planning process with our consultant team, starting with existing condition analysis, data collection, and then our community engagement kickoff. So with that, I will turn it over to questions.
Thank you, Director Isaacson, for being with us. Yes, great, can stop sharing your screen. That's helpful. Do we have questions from the committee? Councilor Cassett.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Thank you, Director Isaacson, for being with us. So I was reviewing the growth management section of the 99 general plan today. And one thing that really struck me was some of the goals that had been outlined there regarding the number of dwelling units that we would be needing by the year 2020. Do you know if we hit those goals? Did we manage to create, I believe it was countywide, not just in the city, but it was over 15,000 dwelling units. How do we do?
So I don't have concrete data to provide an answer on that, but my assumption, based off of historical information around housing production, especially in the 90s and early 2000s, compared to our population growth, I would assume that we did not meet those targets in terms of providing new housing units. And I think, if you read in the growth management section of the general plan, they talk about that slow housing growth through much of the 90s, and that continued in through the early 2000s and through the Great Recession to a large extent. And so I think part of the housing challenges we have now are a result of the lack of housing development for the past 15 plus years. And it's only recently, since about 2017, that we've really seen the amount of housing production in the city really pick up and start to meet the housing needs of the community. And so, over the last year, I think in 2019, we had almost 800 housing units built in the city. And then right now, between units under construction and the sort of units in the pipeline through various approvals processes or permit review, we have about 5,000 units in the pipeline right now in the city. So we're making up for lost time, but I think what we're seeing is sort of that it had that sort of housing production happen sort of steadily through the years, rather than sort of not happening for a very long time and then seeing this large spike in housing production. We might not be experiencing some of the same challenges we have now around issues of growth in the city and sort of the uneven growth in the city. And so I think that slow rate of development for so long is contributing to what we're dealing with now as a community, and also, supports the need for the type of work we're talking about with the growth management plan.
Yeah, I think that's my follow-up question. And I agree with you that, based on what we're seeing, I was guessing that the answer to that question would be no, we did not meet those goals. And I'm hoping that as part of this growth management plan, they had mentioned, these 5-year, this was in the general plan intro, these 5-year reviews, and then they had set these goals and that they were going to be reviewed on a 5-year basis. And as part of this process, will we be able to really say every 5 years, based on what we are expecting, we need to be creating X number of housing, they even said 37% will need to be low income, so that we don't get into, we are in this place, but that we don't continue to make this worse, where we can really see how do we dig ourselves out of this hole, and every 3 to 5 years we have a tangible benchmark that we can look at and assess and make sure that we are on the right path. Will that be something that we'll get out of this process?
So I think it's we started tonight's meeting talking about Bicentennial Pool and the deferred maintenance on that facility, and now we're at a moment where it's like, what do we do? And I think there's been a similar amount of deferred maintenance done over the years in our city around long-range planning, right? And so we did a comp plan in 1999, and then we didn't really think about long-range planning for a really long time. And now here we are in this moment, really saying, like, we really need to re-engage with the long-range planning program in our city. And I think that program includes ongoing evaluation of our planning efforts. And good comp planning requires updates on a sort of 5-year interval to test assumptions, to evaluate progress, to look at opportunities for additional implementation. I think one of the things that challenges our existing general plan is there's a lot of really great ideas in there, but something that is sort of true of many general plans from that era, they're very light on implementation. And so you have really good ideas, but you're not given the tools to actually achieve those goals. And so to be really good at that and be successful in that moving forward, it really requires constant attention to your long-range planning documents to make sure that you are not only coming up with good ideas, but you're working hard to implement those ideas in a way that translates to our built environment.
So then would that implementation plan piece that you're discussing, would that be essentially a next step that we would look at after the growth? It's the growth management plan. We make these assumptions, we talk about these goals, we talk about the issues that we want, and then is that the point where we get more prescriptive and say,
yes,
here are our ways to get from A to B?
I think you're absolutely right, Counselor, and I think that's a great question. And I think that this growth management plan will have more prescriptive recommendations around growth in our city, ranging from things like form-based code overlays in areas of the city that have been identified as appropriate for growth, to more policy type questions around sustainability, or equity and inclusiveness. But one of the things that we are doing in land use, sort of concurrent with the growth management planning process, is updating our land use code. And so the first step in that process is doing a code cleanup, right? Clarifications, technical corrections, removing sort of pieces of the code that might be in conflict with one another, in preparation of then doing a much more substantive update to the land use code, which would be one of the primary tools for implementation of the growth management planning recommendations and land use regulation and policy recommendations. And so it's sort of a multi-step process to really implement those ideas into how the land use department does its work. I think one of the other things that's really interesting about the growth management plan process and how it's been used in other cities is to provide guidance to not just the land use department, but to other departments as well, right? So whether it be parks, public works, public utilities, it gives them some guidance on terms of where their investments need to be made, to take a more holistic approach to growth and development in the city as a whole, and really directing our resources as efficiently and as appropriately as possible moving forward. so that we're not put in a situation that many cities are finding themselves in now, where they have tremendous amount of infrastructure that they can no longer afford to maintain and service. And so that's what traditionally growth at the urban periphery does to a community. And so by doing this growth management planning process and really looking inward as we grow, hopefully we can avoid that scenario for our city in the future.
Yeah, thank you for that. You found another one of my questions about the interdepartmental connections. And I really have been thinking about it. You know, I know you and I have had this discussion about access to services and resources and grocery stores, and how a lot of that is looking at economic development and the overlap there. And I was thinking, you know, it's interesting. We get these maps often of where housing development is happening, but it would be really interesting to see this with a, you know, commercial development overlay, or where there are commercial centers. Because I know, for example, in my district where a lot of the development is happening, there's not much out there. I mean, you have to drive in, and it's not necessarily an easy drive or very convenient drive. You definitely couldn't walk. And that definitely it concerns me. And there's not a lot of public transportation out there. And so I'm not quite sure what part of growth management is also, because it's not just about growth. It's also like, how do we connect the places that we already grew? And how do we integrate those components too? Am I correct that that's also part of this process that we'll be looking at?
I think you're absolutely correct. And I think we're at a really interesting moment because I think we are poised for a real paradigm shift in how we think, not only about residential development, but how we also think about commercial development. So, you know, the sort of brick and mortar was on the decline pre-pandemic. The pandemic's only made that more pronounced. We now have a really different idea around what it means to work in an office. And so, you know, your traditional sort of office retail development may not work anymore, or may not work in the same way. And so I think we're going to see a really, moving forward, and I think this is a really interesting opportunity for the city of Santa Fe, is we're going to identify some really innovative opportunities for blurring the lines, I think, between what's been traditionally commercial versus residential development. And so I think that the fact that we're sort of starting this process now is really advantageous for us as a community, because we get to explore some of those ideas and some of those concepts through this process and really identify new opportunities for, as I said earlier, really complete neighborhood development moving forward. And I don't think we've done that traditionally. It's been very sort of segregated into residential with a small commercial center that serves large surrounding neighborhoods. And I think the growth management planning process will identify opportunities to really better integrate land uses, so that we're not sort of in these sort of residential versus commercial paradigm that our development has really been focused on for the past 20 years.
Yeah, it is interesting to think about how commercial development has changed. And at the same time, I would caution us to think about those things that can't be virtual, and we want to make sure people have access to, like food, like medical offices, like dry cleaning. You can't virtually dry clean, although that would be really handy. You know, some of those pieces that I want to make sure we don't lose, and like that community center and how we you know, dive into that. Yeah, I feel like we've talked about this, you know, kind of a few times, and this discussion of growth management versus a general plan update. You know, you mentioned that we'll be really utilizing some of the values or goals that was set in the general plan in 1999, and they look pretty good. Have we really looked at those guiding principles? And is there any, if we're not doing a full general plan update and we're not updating those guiding principles, are there guiding principles that are no longer relevant, or some that are not there that we want to make sure are included, and how are we making that determination?
So that's a great question. The existing general plan is certainly sort of the jumping off point for any future long-range planning efforts in the city. But to your point about testing values and principles and goals and objectives, I don't think that's really appropriate for me to determine or any one individual in the city to determine, right? And that's why I think, I spoke a little bit earlier about the importance of public participation in this planning process, because this really needs to be a reflection of the values, priorities, and goals of our residents, not of any one person in the land use department or on the city council or anything like that. And so, the challenge is then how do we create the most inclusive public engagement process possible moving forward to really get as many voices and really bring new ideas and new perspectives into that planning process that may not have been there in previous long-range planning efforts that the city's done. So I am trying, that is going to be one of the big the big aha moments in the sort of RFP process, is we're really going to reach out to our consultants that send us proposals and really ask them to tell us, what do you envision as an effective public engagement process and strategy to support this planning effort? And I think that is really going to be, in many ways, the real sort of exciting aspect of the proposals that we evaluate is those respondents who can come up with the most interesting and innovative strategies for reaching as much of our constituency as possible.
Yeah, I agree that it's definitely not something that any one person or even the 9 of us can decide, that it needs to be a much larger conversation. So I'll look forward to hearing more about that. And then in terms of, again, comparing the growth management process to the general plan, and the general plan being our jumping off point, what part of the general plan, there's like the archaeological history, that's not going to change very much, that's history, but what parts of the general plan are we not looking at through this growth management plan that we still need to be thinking about addressing in future years?
Well, I think the growth management planning process will really sort of tease out lots of different areas of the general plan. And I think one of the things that's interesting, if you look at sort of trends in professional planning and how these plans are done, that older plans used to be sort of very like topic based, right? And so you had a chapter on this topic, and you had a chapter on this topic, and you had a chapter on this topic. And there wasn't a lot of investigation into where those topics overlap with each other, and really trying to leverage synergies and sort of opportunities to sort of get 2-for-1s or 3-for-1s, right? Where you can sort of different interventions that can not only help on the housing piece, but can also help on the transit piece, that can also help on the social equity piece, that can also help on the stormwater management piece. And so I think one of the goals of the growth management plan will be to really explore those areas of overlap so that we can really start to make meaningful impacts in the city by exploring not these topics necessarily in silos, but these topics in relationship to one another. And so I think that's maybe a difference in just in how planning is thought of now versus how planning was approached 20 years ago. And so I think we have an opportunity to sort of leverage the newest and best thinking around city planning through this effort that just wasn't on people's minds 20 years ago when they were doing these types of projects.
And then, I'm sorry, you gave me a new term here that I need to research. What did you say? It was form-based something?
So form-based overlay
Okay.
Zones, which is actually not completely foreign to the city. In some ways, the Link overlay district is a sort of form-based overlay. It doesn't quite go fully into the sort of form-based world, but it does start to talk about things like heights, massing, relationship of buildings to the public realm, and rights of way, and getting buildings further out to the city, and allowing taller buildings if you provide more affordable housing, and those types of zoning type overlays, right? Where you have an underlying zoning, but then you create these form-based overlays that guide the way an area develops, either redevelops or infill development occurs. And so I have a feeling, we don't know, we're still working on the scope and looking at what the deliverables will be from this process. But, I anticipate some of the outcomes will be identifying opportunities for these form-based overlays, as well as looking at our future land use map that we currently have and updating that to reflect this sort of infill opportunities we have in our city to densify in a smart way that still preserves the essential character of our city.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. You piqued my nerdiness, and you know that I will be doing Googling and then reaching out to you to discuss new concepts. So I believe those are all my questions. Thank you so much for being here. I really find this so interesting and so integral to the needs of our city. So I look forward to continuing to be updated and continuing to have conversations on this one. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the list, Councilor Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Quick question, Eli, can you send us a copy of the presentation?
Absolutely. Thank you, Councilor. I absolutely will. I kind of raced through one slide because I noticed some typos on it. So if you could give me just an hour or two in the morning to tighten that up, I'll send this over first thing.
Awesome. Yeah, take the time you need. No other questions, Madam Chair. Thank you, Eli, for the info. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, Councilor.
Thank you. Councilwoman Villarreal.
Madam Chair, thank you, Director Isaacson, for your presentation. Just a few things you mentioned, and actually my colleague asked that question about that growth increase of 10 years. Was that due mostly or the majority of that growth was due to annexation? That's absolutely true. About 13,000 residents were added into the city. Because our growth rate, and you didn't address this, but our growth rate is actually closer to 1%, which is very low. I don't know what it is this year. It's probably gone up. It would be interesting to see what it is now. But because our growth rate is so low, that huge increase was primarily due to the annexation. The one thing you mentioned, or you said that since the 1999 general plan, we didn't think about long-range planning for a long time, and I actually disagree. We actually had a long-range planning team. They thought about a lot of these things, and most of your presentations, they had maps about what the trends were looking like for growth, our demographic changes, and unfortunately, at that time, leadership didn't necessarily look at that and say, okay, well, then it's time to move on to update the general plan. And I was thinking about different time eras that happened when we could have done like a 10-year update. And so 2009, we had the economic downturn. So we probably didn't have funding for that. Then 2019, we had been talking about it, but then COVID hit. So there are points, it's not because it was lack of interest, but I think there were times we didn't prioritize it, obviously before your time here. And so those are the things that made me think, yeah, there are definite updates to do that. And I'm glad to see it's going to be happening and that we're moving forward with this and with RFPs. The one question that comes up, I think, for a lot of us from constituents is about when we look at managing growth and the fact that we do need housing units, how are we balancing that out with the limited water resources? And so I think we don't explain that well enough. I also think that there's ways that we could explain what we do that we are taking into consideration. So can you tell us a little bit about what we have in place now with land use and your process for approving or considering development proposals, what you all do to take into consideration our finite water resources, and how does staff look at that when you're evaluating development proposals?
Thank you, Councilor, and I appreciate your initial comments, because I think I was a little flip. I don't think to say that we haven't done any long-range planning in the city for a long time is not fair to those that have worked in the city prior to me and our elected officials. So I appreciate that because I think a lot of work has gone into long range planning where we as a community have maybe come up a little short is adopting those plans, or as you said, prioritizing that work in a way that leads to meaningful updates to either the general plan or comprehensive updates to our land use code, things like that. So I do really appreciate that comment. In terms of water planning, water conservation, water resources in our development proposals, I'll echo what Christine said earlier. There is a conference going on right now that's really talking about these ideas of growth, water conservation, and sort of how do we sustain what we're doing now in the face of a changing climate. So I encourage folks to attend, and actually myself and Jason Klug, the Assistant Land Use Director, will be participating on a panel Friday morning at 11, I believe, to talk about some of this stuff. So those that are interested should join that discussion. But specifically, so on the residential side, on the single family residential side, we have green building codes, a part of which is a WERS rating, which I alluded to earlier, which is a water efficiency rating. And so on single family development, we actually are doing a lot about water conservation. Where we're doing less is in multifamily construction. And so that's something we're taking on this year in collaboration with the Land Use Department, the Water Division, and our sustainable planner in environmental services, Neil Denton. And so we'll be working to bring some legislation forward later this year, extending our green building code out to multifamily construction, not just for water efficiency, but also for energy efficiency. But that being said, multifamily development is much more water efficient than single family development. And so while we are not necessarily requiring a rating system right now for water efficiency, those units that are coming online, that map that I showed earlier, which much of that development is multifamily development, tends to be more water efficient than your standard single family house. And so I think we are doing, the way we're growing now in some ways is more water wise than ways we've grown in the past, but we want to make sure we capture that through some legislation to make sure that these new projects coming in for approval are providing us with that efficiency rating system score so that we can confirm that these developments are really, treating that precious resource carefully.
That's good to hear. And I think that piece about multifamily construction and how it's more water efficient is important to explain. I don't think everybody understands that, but I do think that needs to be a way to think about what we need to do and how it relates to water resources or limited water resources, and actually create procedures and policies within your development process that does take that into consideration. Because right now, isn't it just that you all look at paper water? Can you explain that to us?
I'm not entirely sure. I've heard that term kind of thrown around, the sort of paper, that it's not real water, it's just sort of paper water rights that are floating around.
Can I jump in here?
Absolutely.
Can I jump in here? So I just want to point to two resources. First, the Water Conservation Committee at its last meeting, which was recorded and I believe can be made available, had a whole panel on this whole line of questioning to help understand this better. And to Eli's point, the conference that's going on right now, the Next Generation Water Summit, will attempt to do that panel again in maybe a shorter format. And Marcos Martinez was at the Water Conservation Committee. He's on the recording, and he will be on the panel at 12:15 on Friday to address that very question, that why people think these are paper rights. They are paper rights in the sense that it's a legal right on paper, but they do represent real water. And he is very knowledgeable about this. So I just would direct you to those two presentations one coming up and one that's been recorded. And I agree, we need to get this information out, which is part of the reason why Water Conservation Committee did the presentations, why we set it up, and why there will be this panel at the Next Generation Water Summit on Friday. So just wanted to interject.
That's
those
great.
two pieces.
Thank you for that. I think that question comes up a lot. I don't know how to explain it. And so I'm always trying to figure out and it does relate to growth management. And so people understand how, what broader resources we have, what that looks like legally. And so I'm just flagging that as a piece of the puzzle. And it would be great to see that presentation. I didn't know about that. So thanks for sharing that. Let's see.
And while we're on that point, if I can just add, it's also, if you're in the conference agendas on that afternoon, there's apparently a national agenda and there's a New Mexico agenda. And the panel that we're speaking of is the New Mexico agenda. So you have to make sure you're in the right spot. So I didn't realize that till today. Thanks.
Other than that, I just wanted to say that as a former community planner that has done this work, we started a growth management planning process for the county when I worked there. And we had a lot of consultants that were very interested in the project. And they had a lot of, they use big words. They use a lot of jargon about how they knew planning best. And for political reasons, there was a group that was actually selected that didn't know anything about New Mexico or anything about our region, and it was problematic. And we ended up having to boot them out and finish it as staff. And we finished the growth management plan. So I'm just encouraging you, as you always know, I feel like there are local consultants that know our region, they know about planning, that we really look to give preference to those teams that know what we're dealing with here and have had experience working in New Mexico and northern New Mexico. I just don't want to see consultants from out of state thinking that they know how to even do community engagement. So you already know how I feel about this. I always state this. And so I just want to publicly say it again. I know we have expertise. There's a lot of consulting and contracted teams that do great work in New Mexico. So that's all. Oh, one more thing. There was a slide that you produced about the different demographic shifts. And I was trying to look at it, but you went past it quickly, and they look like the same map, but I'm not sure. So maybe before, we don't have to look at it now, but maybe you could look at it. The color scheme looked the same, even though we know the numbers have shifted dramatically in terms of demographic changes for the city. So if you could just look at that slide, because I felt like the maps look the same, but I didn't get to.
I'd be happy to, Counselor. It's a subtle, because of the gradation, the blues, it's subtle. You really have to look at it pretty closely, but I'll confirm that they are in fact different years, different snapshots, but it's just a subtle, if you look at it closely, it's sort of a subtle shift that shows this sort of gradual graying of our population through most of our census tracts. Just, as we go step, darker in that blue hue, showing a higher concentration of residents over 65 years.
And then if you could send us the link on our website, we actually have some great data when we had long range planning staff, they did trends and maps and really cool visuals about where we're going with growth. And there were I think there might've even been some recommendations, but it was helpful to use. It probably is a little outdated now, but can you find that link for us, Eli, and then share it?
It's on the land use webpage under long range planning, and that document was called Santa Fe Trends. The last report was produced, I believe, in 2016. But kind of off topic, but We are looking to hire a planner in land use as part of this new budget, using the impact fee funds to manage our IFCIP, which is our impact fees capital improvement plan. And part of that, I would like that individual to also sort of start to produce a version of that trends report. It may not be the exact same report, but something analogous to that as part of the work in maintaining the IFCIP. And so hopefully in the next year or so, we'll be getting back in the habit of producing a sort of annual report for the city about growth trends happening. And those reports then will feed into this sort of 5-year planning interval that we discussed earlier in terms of evaluating where we may need to revisit in the growth management plan or the general plan, whatever it might be, as we're kind of constantly updating our long-range planning goals for the city.
Thank you. I'm happy to hear that. I think that would be important and helpful. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Okay, great. Councilor Garcia, your hand is up. Are you still have questions?
Nope, sorry, Madam Chair, that's an old hand.
Okay, old hand, great. So I just want to give one more plug. The next generationwatersummit.com. You can still register, and there were some presentations today that are available on demand, I think for the next, 20 days or something. So even if you register now, it's free to city and county residents. You can go back and on demand watch some of the presentations that happened today. Again, I think there'll be a very interesting panel at 12:15 on Friday that Eli's participating in, and we'll be talking about some of these same things, growth management, water resource planning, and how all this all fits together. And to your point, Councilwoman Villarreal, starting to help develop some of the public understanding about the work that's going on and answering the public's questions that have certainly we've all been getting about growth and water and how do we make this all work. So again, I just wanted to give that plug. Eli, thank you so much for being here tonight. Fascinating. I, like Councilwoman Cassett, very interested in this topic. I think a lot of us are, and really interesting stuff. So thank you for giving us kind of this preliminary presentation about coming attractions. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Right.
My pleasure. I look forward to coming back and providing more updates as we move through the procurement process on this for the growth management plan.
Great. We will put you on our list. With that, we are done with our presentations. We can go to matters from staff. Jennifer, do you have anything tonight?
The only thing is wanted to give the committee a heads up that I will not be here at the next meeting. Jamie Ray is going to be covering for me. She staffs the Public Works and Utilities Committee. So I will see you all together in about a month.
Terrific. Matters from the committee. No matters from the committee. Matters from the chair. Our next meeting, Wednesday, June 16th. But I know we'll be getting together before then. So very interesting conversation tonight. Thank you all. Really, I think interesting how all the things on our agenda, sort of, what's the right word?
Connect.
Overlap, connect. Connect is the right word. Thank you. So really, really interesting, these different aspects of the quality of life in Santa Fe. So thank you, everyone. We'll see you at the next one.